All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Politics and Prose. I'm Brad Graham, the co-owner of the bookstore, along with my wife, Lissa Muscatine, and we are very pleased to be hosting Reality Winner, who's here to talk about her new book, I Am Not Your Enemy. What Reality did 8 years ago that got her in a lot of trouble and made headlines is well known. But just to recap, she was a 25-year-old U.S. Air Force veteran working as a private contractor for the NSA when in May 2017, she stumbled across a 5-page intelligence report about how Russia had hacked U.S. election officials and some voter registration software in the 2016 presidential election. Fearing the Trump administration, which had just taken office several months before, would bury the information, Reality printed a copy of the report, smuggled it out of the building where she worked in her pantyhose, and mailed it to the Intercept, an online news site that specializes in national security matters. The FBI was able to identify Reality pretty quickly as a source of the leak, and she was eventually convicted of espionage and sentenced to 5 years in prison, which was the longest sentence imposed on a civilian for taking classified information. In June 2021, she was released to a halfway house and later to home confinement with an ankle bracelet. And today, Reality lives in Texas, where she works as a CrossFit coach and a pet care provider. The story of the leaked document has been recounted quite a few times over the years. It was the subject even of a Broadway play, a documentary, 2 films, 2 books, and countless news articles. So why publish a memoir now? One reason is for Reality to tell what happened in her own words, and also to flesh out her life beyond the scandal, which she does, writing very lively and engagingly about her family history, military career, time in jail, and other matters. Additionally, as a Washington Post review noted, Reality's book tackles questions that have become even more pertinent over time. About, for instance, government secrecy and how media organizations protect their sources, about the application to modern-day leak cases of the rather arcane Espionage Act, under which Reality was convicted, and about what to do if federal agents show up and arrest you without reading your Miranda rights. So there's much to discuss here this afternoon. And guiding the conversation with Reality will be Dina Temple-Raston, who's host and managing editor of the Click Here podcast, as well as a senior correspondent at Recorded Future News. Previously, Dina worked at NPR on the investigations team there and created the award-winning podcast, What Were You Thinking? She's also the author of 4 nonfiction works, among them A Death in Texas, about the aftermath of a white supremacist murder in a Texas town, and The Jihad Next Door, about 6 Yemeni Americans and their brush with al-Qaeda and the U.S. justice system. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Reality and Dina. Thank you.
Tom, are we supposed to use these mics too?
Yes.
Are they on? Is it on? Can you hear me? Great. Okay, super. Thanks so much for being here, Reality. I just want to start by setting some expectations a little bit here. I know there are things that you can't talk about. Can you clarify what the parameters are of the conversation?
Yes, so first of all, thank you guys for all being here. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy to be back in DC. I love the city. The parameters, I've always described them as vague and menacing because I have my NDA that is lifelong from working at the National Security Agency, which is not to review or reveal classified information. However, in the plea deal that was given to me by the DOJ is anything that could possibly be related to classified information. So at one
What does that
point,
mean exactly?
we don't know. They've been, I'm not going to say the word lax, but they've been reasonable about it. So at one point, my attorney asked the DOJ, there was a war in Afghanistan. Are we allowed to say that? Because technically that's related to classified information. Like, how broad is this? So anything within the four corners of that document, and then just knowing what I can and can't say about my former career with a top secret clearance.
Okay, so let me try and fill in some details that are public so that we don't get you in trouble. When you left the Air Force, you were a commended crypto linguist and a translator, and you were helping geolocate the enemy, basically. You produced thousands of reports. You helped in hundreds of enemy captures. There's a commendation on the wall of your house. I should say we've met before. Shortly after you were released from prison, we went down to Texas to interview you and spent the day with you. And so there's a commendation on the wall that has just the number of amazing things you did when you were in the Air Force as a cryptolinguist. And to do all this, you were sitting in a room in the US listening in on secretly made recordings of people believed to be the Taliban or other terrorists. So this is all in the memoir. But can you talk a little bit about that, like what it's like listening one word at a time and what your job was? Because I found that in the book just fascinating. I've never seen anybody describe that before.
Yeah, so being one of the first linguists of the war in Afghanistan to really give a firsthand account of how this war was fought across the world from right here in the DC, Maryland area was to kind of show like it was really banal and boring. And we really never at any time felt qualified to do what we were doing, but we were required to do it. The people that didn't want to do it failed their PT tests and then got assigned somewhere else. They failed their language tests. And then those of us like me who wanted to stay attached to the mission, who were dedicated to preventing the next 9/11 or who were very interested in Afghanistan itself, were just trying one word at a time to figure out what the hell we were doing there. However, what I will say is what I did was so compartmentalized that we were assigned soldiers on the ground, and our job was just to be the eyes and the ears in and around those soldiers. And so a lot of times we were just doing direct protection operations of soldiers that were on the ground doing, we weren't even sure what they were doing. That's how compartmentalized, like we were so compartmentalized that we never had like the bigger picture of what was going on.
So you're hearing little snippets of conversations and trying to pass those snippets along. You don't know how it's fitting into a broader context. You just know this snippet might be important. So this is what I heard. Does that sound right?
Exactly. They never used the word American, so we didn't know who they were seeing. It was just walking down the street and somebody says they see something that's reportable. And you don't know who that person is or what they're doing, but you heard it. That's how vague this war was conducted. Like, it was so indiscriminate.
And you say in the book that in the end, you sort of felt like you helped kill a lot of people and you didn't feel good about that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of us spent hours with our language instructors who were native speakers from the target country. So we spent a lot of our time with people from Iran and Afghanistan and the occasional person from Pakistan. And they would give us a firsthand history of what was going on in country and why there were violent conflicts going on. And part of our language instruction in Pashto was to read their own propaganda and things like, the United States was funding the Taliban through Pakistan. Like, so why are we doing this, right? Like, that was things that they were giving us that they found online that we could translate, but also learn new words and new context from. And so when it came to carrying out the job, the people who were our direct supervisors were sergeants who had just come in from like a Korea assignment. These officers were personnel officers. They were not linguists. And so they would come in, they would see, the black and green screens, the infrared, and they'd say, hey, why aren't we doing anything? And those of us who were like, we're listening to farmers, trying to explain to them that this is not an actively like hot conflict. And then there was a lot of ego going on with like the command, because we were always competing against NSA Georgia. And so every morning at 7 a.m., we'd have to sit there and be on like this big old conference call. And day after day, nothing from Maryland, nothing from Maryland. And the officers would literally come by and be like, y'all need to make something happen. It was highly unethical, and it was very difficult after having spent 2 years with people who were children under the Taliban in the 90s, who had come here as refugees and who knew exactly what was going on the ground.
So in other words, what you're saying is there was a lot of pressure to hear something and report something because you were in competition with other units that were doing the same thing.
Exactly.
And I think what you told me when we first met was that you don't necessarily speak Pashto. You listen to it and know it. Did they give you like 1,000 really important words? What is that? How do you do that if you can't actually speak it?
So the disparity between our education and our mission, and I can give an example for Pashto in particular. All of our instructors came from like the Kabul area, with the exception of our one Pakistani instructor. And our first mission was in the South. It was the same language, but it wasn't. Mm-hmm. It was like somebody from Boston getting dropped in Georgia and trying to figure it out. And English isn't their first language, right? We didn't understand it at all. And we pushed back, like, we're not ready to do this. We don't understand this language, actually. And for Farsi and kind of per Pashto, they wanted us to be able to, like, read the Constitution in that language. And then we would, like, get to our job, and they were like, how do two people say hello to each other in slang? And we were just like, I don't know. I don't know what any of the slang words are. I don't know any of the shorthand. But I'm pretty sure I could go to college in Afghanistan.
Mm. Wow. So you're sort of picking up y'all and things like that in Pashto.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So more and more people like you are doing this kind of work remotely, right? So you're not on the ground in Afghanistan, which you very much wanted to be, and that's not where they sent you. And they're not on the ground in a war zone. And like you, many report that even from a distance, they feel the weight of all of that, and even develop PTSD. Did that surprise you? And when did you understand that you might be on the receiving end of something like that? How did it manifest itself?
Yeah, so there's a lot of guilt associated with this career field because we are not overseas. Like, we put on the same uniform as soldiers overseas. We wear the camouflage. We put on the combat boots. And when we enlisted, we were told, learn a language, you'll travel the world. We learned the language, and they said, you're too expensive. You can be in Maryland or Georgia, and you can switch back and forth for the next 20 years. You will not travel. And for us, it had always been about doing our fair share and being part of this, this conflict, and not doing it from a desk, right? So we were always very, very hard on ourselves. The guilt was insane. The pressure was insane. And then feeling like what we were doing was inherently wrong. The, linguists were very independent. We're kind of too smart to be there, right? And yet we were there because we thought we would do something important. And it just wasn't.
And what did you originally join up for? I know that you wanted to do something very different in Afghanistan. So why don't you explain why you originally joined up and then the sort of disconnect between that?
Yeah, I joined to go to Afghanistan. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there, but it started with 9/11. It started with my father being a psychologist and a theologist and wanting to understand how psychology and faith can mix to get somebody who's willing to fly a plane into a building. And he said, he would always tell me, find any homeless man in America, he wouldn't do it. But somehow something overseas is happening. And it took me until months before my arrest. It was too late by that time to understand that it's neurology. It's not psychology, it's neurology, and it's early childhood development and not having an entire generation raised with PTSD, right? But at the time, I just thought if I could get over there, and be somebody. I think I wanted to be a journalist this whole time. I think that was the goal, but the language school was with the military. And I just wanted to figure it out.
And you didn't just go to any language school. You went to the language school, the one in Monterey.
The Hogwarts of languages?
Yes. I didn't know that's what it was called, but I like it. So one of the things we talked about when we came down to Texas was the leak culture in 2017, which I think it's so long ago now, it's really hard for people to remember. So I was hoping that you'd read a little something from the book about that in the weeks before the leak actually happened, and then we'll talk a little more on the other side of it. So hold on for just a second. Let me give you the book.
This is low-key like a sobriety test. Perfect. All right. As bad as all this was, my distress was amplified by the tone in the media. It's easy to forget now, but the atmosphere then was one of impending authoritarianism. Kind of not hard to forget now. In February, the Washington Post had adopted a new slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness." This was the newspaper that had exposed the Watergate scandal during the Nixon administration. Surely they knew what they were talking about. Respected political scientists, historians, and pundits were publishing books with the titles like How Fascism Works, On Tyranny, Twilight of Democracy, How Democracies Die, How Democracy Ends, Fascism, A Warning, and The Road to Unfreedom. Trump is following the authoritarianism playbook was the headline of an op-ed on CNN.com written by a specialist in Italian fascism. The media had a vested interest in fostering hysteria, and I admit I fell prey to it. Amid the plethora of crises, a classified intelligence report appeared on NSA Pulse, the NSA's clearinghouse. The stuff posted there is usually boring and dumb. Not this. For anyone able to decipher the bureaucratic language, the report's contents were riveting. On this issue of Russia's interference in our elections, the hottest, most disputed topic of the day, the document in front of me had exclusive critical details. This report seemed like a bombshell, but one thing confounded me. Why this secret? Why isn't this getting out there? Why can't this be public? It was labeled top secret, but that didn't mean it should be top secret. For one thing, everyone who had access to NSA Pulse could read it. One helpful feature of NSA Pulse is that, like Twitter, it shows which articles are trending. That narrows down the content and directs readers to what others are finding most interesting. The piece began to trend on the site, eventually becoming the most read article, which meant it was being read by countless intelligence agents around the world. This is the national security state version of going viral. I read the report over again and then again, once more again. People in the office were talking about it. Someone asked, "Dude, did you see that?" "Yeah," someone replied. "I wonder when someone's going to leak that to the press." Surely the information would make its way to the media, I figured. It was only a matter of time. But I kept watching the news, and it didn't happen. The whole country knew that Trump had volunteered classified intelligence information to fucking Russia, but this was somehow being kept under wraps. Somehow, I still didn't plan on doing anything drastic. But as it turned out, that's just what I did.
So thank you, that was good. Just to put a finer point on it, there's an internal sort of Twitter feed with intelligence that everybody's cleared is seeing this internal Twitter feed. You see this document trending that connects Russia with interference in the 2016 election. And at that time, I'm still a journalist, but I was a journalist at the time in 2017, there were tons of leaks coming out at that time. So your assumption was, this is too hot, it's gonna come out. Take us back to that time. You're waiting for it to come out. It doesn't come out. What's going through your head?
So during that time, we did not like leaks. There was always a leak on Friday afternoon. And that meant our office supervisor, who was like 32 years old and going gray, would have to come in on Saturday. That's how like the leaks really did affect us from day to day, week to week. We weren't happy about them. Some of the things that were getting out, either whispers from Congress and stuff like that, it was all word of mouth. But every single week, something had come out in the first 4 months of the new Trump administration.
And let me just stop you for a second. And so every time one of these leaks happened, everybody kind of got raked over the coals to see if you were responsible for it. Is that how it worked?
No, but some of the stuff that was getting out directly affected overseas missions. And so that was when supervisors would have to come in. They would have to come in and fix things or protect people. So I was in a shop where we did see firsthand what the effect of some of these things actually were. But we had kind of resigned ourselves to expecting to see this document in the news very soon. And one of the things that led me to feel so isolated and hopeless and desperate to do something is that when I saw that document, I thought, because we saw it, we with the security clearance holders saw it, I thought that meant Congress saw it. I thought that meant the Senate saw it. I thought that meant people in power in elected positions had seen it, and they hadn't. It's just us.
So you thought you were just sort of pushing it out?
Yeah, I thought I was pushing it out. I thought Congress was keeping it from y'all too, but it was kept from Congress as well.
So it's important to know that this document wasn't like 40 pages. You didn't take many documents. This was a 5-page document. And you decide, okay, what happens next?
Well, it was my professional 24-year-old opinion at the time that the document in question was obsolete, was not compromising sources or methods. And my idea was to get it to the Intercept and to get it in front of the American people, and that the American people would be so grateful to have it. They would be so angry it was kept from them that by the time the consequences caught up with me, they wouldn't be as bad. I don't know what else to say. I don't think I thought I would get away with it, but I didn't know anything about the other leakers, but I knew they did it digitally. So I thought if I did it the lowest possible way, just carrying a paper out and mailing it, would buy the Intercept as much time as possible to get it in front of the American people before they found me. And that was my goal. I was not thinking about what to do after that. That's why I didn't have a single attorney in my life when the FBI showed up. My only goal was to walk out of there with the document and get it to the Intercept.
And so you print out the document.
Printed.
Yes. And you have a yoga class that afternoon. You're
Yes.
teaching one. So take me back to that afternoon.
So obviously, I had to commit a felony in a way that was convenient to me. So after work, I went to the gym. It was sitting in my car all afternoon. eventually it got put in an envelope, and I got called to sub a yoga class. So I went and subbed the yoga class, and it was still sitting in my car. And I looked across the street from the yoga studio, and there was that blue, USPS box. And I thought, well, I have to mail it from somewhere. So I popped across the street, dropped it off. And for 2 weeks, nothing had happened. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I don't know why I walked out with the document that particular day, because I did something. Obviously, it did change my life eventually, something so crazy. But for 2 weeks, nothing happened. So in my mind, I was like, if I can forget that Tuesday happened, it didn't happen. Because clearly it got lost in the mail, or they saw it, they shredded it. Nothing will come of this. So as long as I forget about it, I can continue to go to the NSA every day and not act like a guilty, crazy person. And so I made myself forget what I had done.
So you felt like you got a mulligan, like I did something maybe wasn't so smart, but by the grace of God, nobody's got it, so I'm just going to continue my life.
Yeah, it's like when you break something when mom's not home, but she doesn't notice, so you never talk about it.
Okay, and your mother's looking around now to see what you broke. So, so how did the Intercept handle it? I think from a journalism perspective, for me, this is a super interesting part of the book, because as a national security correspondent, typically, what you're supposed to do is you want to authenticate a document, but you retype it or you read it to someone because you have no idea if there's something in that document that might be identifying, like a misspelled word or something like that. So why don't you talk a little bit about how the Intercept handled it and how that might have led to a number of cascading events in your life?
So one of the things that has calmed down regarding the way the Intercept had handled the document for me is being mad at Glenn Greenwald in particular, because he was just like, this document is not personally interesting to me. I'm not going to publish it.
Did you send it to him?
No, but he was kind of the one calling the shots at the time.
Got it.
And he was the one that said, we're not publishing it. So for those 2 weeks where I had made myself forget what had happened and nothing had happened, that was because he had just nixed it. What happened after that is they had the document, they had it in a secure place, they were following protocol, and Matthew Cole came along and he wanted to verify the document.
Young journalist?
That some people may call him that. I call him a rat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
You'll understand why in a second, so go ahead.
His personal interest in verifying the document led him to basically sending either a scan or a direct photograph of the paper itself with the crease showing it had been printed and folded to somebody he was on a first name basis with in the NSA. So not like the actual journalistic where you protect it and you go to the right office. He sent it to his buddy. And his buddy's like, hey, where'd that come from? And he said, the mail. And his friend said, can I see the envelope? And he said, yeah, sure. It came from Augusta, Georgia. I could have just put my name on the envelope and made it easier for them because he gave it straight to the feds. And a lot of people from the Intercept have condemned that. What I'm waiting for is somebody to come out and confirm that he did that for personal interest alone.
What do you mean by that?
Like I said, they were not going to publish the document.
I see.
So why is he verifying it, and why is he going around the Intercept's protocol and doing it on his own personal email to his own personal contact? Like, he was just being messy and had nothing to do with verifying the document for publication.
I should say that I talked to the Intercept about this when we interviewed right after you got out of prison, and they claimed this is not what happened.
I've seen the emails between him and his buddy from the NSA. They're part of the evidence against me.
Okay. I just thought I would say that. So how long was it between that phone call that Cole made and the time when the FBI showed up at your house?
I am not sure. I haven't seen like the time or date stamp on when Cole ratted me out, but I I mailed the document, May 9th, May 13th? I don't know.
May.
Like I said,
Yeah.
we forgot that happened, right? But by the end of the month, June 2nd, they were there. So about 3 weeks.
So take us back. You're coming in, you have groceries, you love animals. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you're coming in the house, and what? Cars come from, is it like a SWAT movie? What was it like?
It was one car and then a second car.
Blocking you in?
Yeah, so I was immediately parked in. We did have an aerial shot of that. We took it to court to say that I was blocked in. And that was when Agent Garrick and Taylor came out. And immediately, like, obviously, I'm not going to say they're older men, but they were older than me. And they were dressed professionally, and I was dressed like I just got off a date with the cute boy and I was getting groceries. They immediately were like, "You've been gone a while," I think is what he said before they started recording. Like, we've been waiting for you. And I'm like, it's 3 p.m, but okay. So immediately using tactics to catch me off guard, make me feel apologetic, make me feel self-conscious. I mean, like, really embarrassing. They had been tailing me that whole day. And I spent a really long time at the grocery store because I wanted to get a beer, but I wasn't drinking at the time. But I was going to go to the guy's house that night. So I got a beer, then I put it away. Then I got another beer. Then I got a 6-pack. Then I put it away. Like, I destroyed that Kroger. And the FBI was just like circling me, like following me, like, damn, this girl's good. She knows we're following but
You were just indecisive, not good.
yeah, I was just freaking out. I was panicking. So they had immediately started off like that. And they said, "We have a warrant. We are looking for documents." And I was like, whew, I don't have any documents. This is going to be easy. And after that, it just kind of devolved into that interrogation that happened in a back room in my house.
And just to be clear, so at that moment, did you think, oh, they're here about that document? Or did you think, oh, they're here about something else?
I knew they were here about that document, but I didn't have that document.
I see. So maybe you could slip through.
Maybe I would have another day to figure out what my legal options were.
Okay. And I should say, if you've ever been curious about what an FBI interrogation is like, an entire play was made from the transcript, played on Broadway. Entire play was made from the transcript of that particular back and forth.
They published the transcript during a hearing to determine whether or not I was in custody at the time I made that confession. And just to let you know, the court never ruled on that. Like, it's still pending post-conviction whether or not that was a custodial confession or not, because we were trying to get it thrown out. And so they published that transcript to show, they wanted it both ways. They wanted me to be stupid and naive, but they wanted to be like, look how cunning and calm and manipulative she is. They wanted to humiliate me. And they turned it into a play. They were like, no, this is a script.
It's actually a really good play. Have you been to it?
Oh, absolutely not, no.
Oh. Because?
I don't read, watch, engage in anything about me. It's just immediate physical trauma response.
Got it. Okay. So did they actually arrest you that day?
They did. Privilege speaking, I feel like when a uniformed police officer showed up, the first women that showed up that day, I felt like that was when I was actually going to survive. The only thing I knew about previous leakers was that when they got Chelsea Manning, she went to Quantico and was in solitary confinement for 9 months, and nobody knew where she was. So when Agent Garrick decided to try to tell me that I was under arrest, he didn't have the balls to tell me I was under arrest. He said, "Hey, so I'm sorry, but we're going to have to take you in." Didn't say where I was going. He said, "We'll go in this vehicle," gestures to an unmarked government vehicle with civilian plates. He said, "Don't worry, we'll cuff you in the front so you're comfortable, and I'll sit next to you the whole way." and I'm sorry, but it's going to be a bit of a drive. So I was like, okay, we are going to Quantico tonight from Georgia, handcuffed.
Were you scared? Were you scared?
Yeah, that was when I thought my life was over. Luckily, I don't know, luckily the court had issued a warrant for my physical person. And that's what saved my life that night, because they sent 11 men to interrogate me and carry out the search warrant. They needed a woman to pat me down and do the physical search. So they had to call in somebody from the local sheriff's office. And so a woman police officer came in her marked vehicle, and she took me to the back room and patted me down. I really wasn't wearing much, so it was kind of like extra. Came back out, and I don't know what happened, but she went and talked to Agent Garrick and Taylor. And after that conversation, another female police officer showed up in her car, and she came up to me and said, "Hey, I guess I'm gonna make the arrest." So then, like, the awkward little, just follow me to the vehicle. We got to the vehicle, and then she said, "Oh, I'm gonna have to cuff you." And she cuffed me and helped me into the back of the vehicle, closed the door. And as she drove away from the FBI, it just felt like I survived, because just a bunch of non-uniformed armed men, 9 out of 11 were armed. I could see all the weapons. It's fine. Not a single marked police, or not a single marked vehicle. They were just completely incognito, which is what we're seeing in the country now. Yeah, I just knew that once I was in an actual police vehicle with another woman, I was documented for, and that I could be found.
Did they Mirandize you?
Never.
Never. Not even the Georgia police officer,
No.
woman police officer.
No, she did not.
Wow. So you're taken to the local jail, and you're there for how long?
I spent June, July, August. 15 and a half months there, maybe 15 months in one room.
And then they transfer you to a federal facility.
Well, I went to an ICE detention center, then I got on a plane and then went to a county jail in Oklahoma, and then got to go to prison.
And then COVID happens when?
COVID started in Carswell I think we were first affected by it in March of 2020.
Carswell is Georgia.
Carswell
Texas.
is FMC. Carswell, it's in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Okay. And how does your life change because it's COVID?
So I was doing great in prison before COVID. I had my spin class. I was getting paid 12 cents an hour to work out. I was in my own, I was doing college. Everything was great.
Great-ish.
Great-ish. Compared to, like, once you're in a county jail, I'm telling you, that prison felt like, I thought I made it to Harvard when I stepped onto that prison compound. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. It's so big. I'm going to get lost every day. So I had really done everything I could to make my world in that prison as rich and exciting and accomplishing as much as possible. I had a yoga class, and I was helping. My biggest interest was in rehabilitating people with advanced substance abuse problems, to the point where, like, I don't know if you guys know a lot of people that have done meth really heavily, but like the connection from brain to body gets burnt out, and so they lose proprioception. So like my yoga class on Friday night was like a bunch of former meth addicts, and just learning how to teach them and seeing how, if I told them to move their left hand, they would actually move their left hand. That was like a really big deal. And so, like I said, everything that I was doing was so fulfilling until they put us back on lockdown and immediately subjugated us to like county jail conditions again.
So you were charged under the Espionage Act of, is it 1817?
1917.
1917. You were charged under the Espionage Act of 1917. 1917. What was your understanding of the Espionage Act before that?
We used to make fun of like the World War II posters that were like loose lips sink ships. Because it's obvious, like we had seen, like I remember when Chelsea Manning had leaked and Fox News put the documents up on the TV screen, and we watched it from a secured facility on Fox News. Like our brains broke because we're like, that's not a top secret TV screen. That information can't be on that TV screen. It affected our job. When Snowden did his thing, all of a sudden we have to go through metal detectors every day, like going through TSA every day to go to work. That wasn't there before him. So you never wanted to be that guy. But we never really thought of it as like giving up troop locations, like in like a World War II tactical, like where are the trenches, right? We never thought of it like that. And I think I don't know if they did it on purpose, but 793E of the Espionage Act is simply willful retention and disclosure of national defense information. And there is no like legal subtext defining national defense information. That's not top secret, classified. It's just whatever they want to define it in your indictment as being.
And what goes through your head when you see now with the second Trump administration the implication that they want to sort of widen the aperture of the Espionage Act to perhaps target journalists, target enemies, et cetera? Does this feel like deja vu all over again to you, or what's your impression of it?
Yeah, we are absolutely cooked. I will say it is very strange how this is like a bad TV show where the same people keep getting recycled. And so like one season they're good, one season they're bad, one season they're good. I remember when my mother was actually trying to get in contact and working with staffers of Tulsi Gabbard. This was probably maybe 2019 because she wanted the Espionage Act like either taken away or made more specific legally so it couldn't be used against whistleblowers. Like, I don't know what she's doing now, but
things have changed.
We have been trying to get this amended and made so that the problem with my charge is I walked out with that document, I broke some major rules. I've never said I didn't break the law. However, under the way that law is written, it doesn't matter how I'm treated. Like the law will treat me the same if I did it for you guys or if I sold that document to North Korea for $1 million. The consequences are the same. I don't think that's right.
So there's a great deal in the book about the time you spent in prison, and I really tell people it's quite moving and really makes us feel like we're there with you. One of the things that you write is that when you came home and you came back to Texas, you were living with your parents, your mom and I guess your stepdad. Yeah. You said you were free, but you really didn't feel like it. Tell me what you mean.
So they don't tell you when you get out that it's harder than prison getting out. I think especially for me culturally with my parents, just being like the most clean-cut people you can imagine, I didn't realize when I walked out, came to the halfway house, and then eventually got driven home by my stepdad with an ankle monitor on, that I no longer knew how to relate to these people that were known as my parents. We didn't have the same culture, the same language. Everything was so different. And the way that the halfway house operated with constant downward pressure on me, like, oh, your ankle monitor is buzzing, we're gonna have to take you back in because it's not working. If the ankle monitor doesn't work at your house, you have to be in custody. Your ankle monitor is low on battery. If you miss a phone call because you're in the shower, that counts as an escape attempt. Getting drug tested constantly. And we used to say they were watching the house because both of my parents worked like about an hour away, and they would try to leave as late as possible, at like 7, 10 a.m. because they're supposed to notify you if you have a drug test by 7 a.m. so you can make arrangements to come in. They would, no matter when my parents left, they would wait till 10 minutes after they left to call me and tell me I had a drug test. It got really, I'm telling you, they did this like probably every 9 days for 5 months. And at no point did they authorize me to drive my own vehicle. Like we had that form. They approved it 2 days before I got the ankle monitor cut off. So like the games that they were playing, my parents were frustrated. I was frustrated. I was scared. We were just like at each other's throats the whole time. I wish I had just stayed in prison till that November.
And do you feel free now?
I do. It's a lot better than when I was under probation. But the last year of probation was all right. I actually wound up having it's a small town. And so I don't know why they gave me that probation officer, but we had family ties. And so we just never acknowledged that for a year. It was really awkward. But he's my best friend's brother-in-law. So it was I think we were coordinating through her, hey, I'm going to go to this party. And then he wouldn't be there. And then she would text me and be like, hey, he's coming to this party. You can't be there. So we could never be at the same place at the same time. So the last year was okay. But it is hard. You can't get pulled over for anything. You can't have a brake light out, because that counts against you. Why are you talking to the cops? You have to report yourself for that. It just was really, and then of course I had a 10 p.m. curfew. Nobody in the feds. My friend committed armed bank robbery with a sawed-off shotgun, and he didn't have a 10 p.m. curfew. So it's crazy.
If you just, my last question here, before we go to the audience, if you think back to the person you were before all of this, does any of that person remain? And what do you think has changed?
The simple thing is the person I was before thought traveling the world would be fun. And now I'm heightened senses and no, that's not fun. I hate traveling now. But I think that the person I was before, I had grown up looking outside of America's borders for problems to solve, right? We call that the white savior complex now. But as a kid in the 90s, that's what we were raised to do, to look at other problems and other conflicts to be part of. And so now what I understand is the most dangerous things in America are us. The call is coming from within the house, the threat, the greatest. And I was kind of getting aware of that, seeing the stats for the first time in the last year of being in the military, understanding that even in 2015, as I wore a uniform, because I wanted to stop the next 9/11, that 86% of all terroristic attacks in the United States are domestic white supremacy attacks. And so it was really hard for me to understand why I was sitting there in that uniform listening to Pashto.
If you could go back and not leak the document, would you not do it?
Absolutely not. It did not accomplish what I had hoped. It didn't bring the country together. It didn't answer the question. If I have to commit a felony over again, I would be a lot more comfortable sitting in that prison for 4 years, having taken that document straight to DC and given it to someone like Bernie Sanders, right? It would have been the same felony. I still would have gone to prison for it. But it would have been a lot easier to keep my head up, knowing that I had tried to do the right thing in the most legal way possible.
And not to put too fine a point on this, but if you'd actually handed it to someone who was allowed to see it, like somebody who was part of SISI or the Senate, you would have been a whistleblower, right?
No, I still would have gone to prison. I think that's what happened to Thomas Drake. But because the document left the facility and I was not the one to make the determination if that senator needed or had the need to know, it still would have been espionage to give it to a member of Congress.
So I wanted to go to questions from the audience, if you have some. There's a microphone up here, and if you could just introduce yourself, and if you have a question, you can raise your hand. We've stunned them into silence. Could you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
And if you're not able to come up, just yell at me. We'll repeat the question for the recording.
I'd just like to go back. Victor Brushnevitz, I'm actually local to D.C. We haven't met, but I worked with Sonia, if you remember
Yay.
my name. Hi. At any rate, I wanted to go back to your trial and discuss how pivotal the custodial arrest, not custodial arrest, and then you not being Mirandized was in your trial. How significant was that for that process?
Yes, so that not being Mirandized could have been a mistrial, and then getting that custodial confession thrown out was like, there were two questions we had as to whether or not we were going to take it to a jury trial, and that was question number one.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other question?
I like pop culture questions too.
I've got one while you're thinking. If you imagine yourself 10 years from now, reality, where would you be?
I'm still going to be on that land in Texas that my parents bought in 1992. But it's 10 acres. I have 10 dogs, but I'm thinking I could fit a lot more dogs there. And I'm not Catholic, but we found this statue, and I thought it was Jesus with dogs. And it turns out it's Saint Rocco, the patron saint of stray dogs and disease. I don't know why. But so we're thinking about trying to turn those 10 acres into Saint Rocco's stray dog sanctuary.
Oh, that's very nice. Go ahead.
My name's Andrew. I was wondering what are some of your favorite books since we're in a bookstore?
Yeah, so I already looked. They don't have very many, but my favorite books are by Salman Rushdie. But right now I am reading a lot of nonfiction, so I would recommend anybody who hasn't read The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Is incredibly poignant right now. He's one of those writers where my dad always said a true genius could hold two facts in their head at the same time, and they're both true. And I feel like if you were to read The Message, he handles that really powerfully.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Other questions? Yes, if you could.
My name is Judy. I heard your NPR interview a couple of weeks ago, so I'm super psyched to see you in person. And I'm curious about what you were saying about the Espionage Act, because I feel like that came up with Signalgate. And was this really classified information? So how are you and your mom continuing to try to get that law kind of more codified, and how can we support you?
For me personally, my activism only extends to my local city right now. I've kind of not given up on the federal government because we should never do that. But right now, the things that we are focused on have to do with our direct communities, which is what I highly recommend to anybody who feels powerless right now to do before worrying about what's happening in DC. I felt like Signalgate was very stupid, but I also do feel like it was a distraction from the substance. You know, they were more focused on the emojis than why we were using the post 9/11 AUMF to drop bombs in Yemen.
Thank you.
Next question?
I'm an attorney. I represented whistleblowers who alleged Medicare and Medicaid fraud, career fed. And I don't want to ask any questions that would get you in trouble. So have you reconciled with your parents? Are you all comfortable together now?
We are, but we're doing much better now that they have moved to North Carolina. Distance makes the heart grow fond. And once I am out of college, I am planning on buying their house and their property to give them more like security in their retirement. But my mother's very happy right now. She is a 24/7 on-call grandma to my niece. And we are still as close as we were.
Let me just add to that. Can you explain what you're doing right now in terms of college?
Yes, so I am currently at Texas A&M University, Kingsville, and I'm in the veterinary technology program.
Thank you.
And next question.
Hi, my name is Tony, and I'm a journalism professor. And I'd like to know what you would tell me to tell my students about the situation with the Intercept.
What would you say is the antonym or the opposite of a source?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Like, if I'm a source, you're a receiver?
I'm a journalist.
A journalist?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot easier then. Don't be a journalist if you're not going to protect a source. You should go to jail before they do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrew, and I just have a question. Do you feel the write-up on Wikipedia about you is fair?
That is something that I have wrestled with a long time because my first week of prison, somebody had that. And people in prison are not very literate. So they were like, oh my gosh, she was in the Russian military. I didn't really feel like disproving that because it meant people were afraid of me. But some of the stuff in there is like inflammatory for no reason, out of context. But now I just own it. You know what I mean? A Broadway play, a documentary, and 2 Hollywood movies later, Wikipedia can eat it.
Thank you.
This gentleman here.
My name is Kevin. I have a question about the Women's March in D.C. Did that have any influence on you, seeing like a mass, like a spontaneous demonstration? And did it have any, effect besides that, if it did or didn't affect you? And also, there's a film about Afghanistan out called Bodyguard of Lies. It's on CBS Paramount. It's based on the Washington Post Afghan papers. The author of the Afghan papers is a producer of it. And I saw Sonia's movie about you. I can't remember the name of it, but some people here might be interested in it.
Yeah.
Careful the wire, careful the wire.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I know the, the Afghanistan papers. I had gotten a copy of that really early on, and I found that to be just like shocking. If you haven't read it, you should read it because it's pretty much Donald Rumsfeld in 2006 saying, we actually don't know what we're doing here. And it was published, a month before the pullout in August of 2021. So I feel like the timing is everything.
Yeah. And are you studying to be a vet? Is that what you're going to end up being?
So most states require veterinary technologists to have a license. Luckily, the state of Texas does not. However, the state of Texas has ruled me personally to be ineligible for a license because of my criminal background. In order to get into this school, because the program is very exclusive, they only allow 30 people in every 4 years, it's required that you're eligible for a license. So I had to go out of pocket, get a legal team based in Texas to ask the state of Texas, why can't I get a license? They had some reasons. We went back and forth, and then the final reason was any criminal conduct renders you ineligible. So I will be staying in Texas. I hope to be working in a clinic or at least with animal control. I'm really interested in rescue and triage, getting my hands dirty, solving problems right then and there. But in order to get into school, we did have to get permission for me to take the national test for it. So I could qualify for a license, I just can't get one.
Can you imagine a time, Reality, when this is completely behind you?
I will imagine it when I have a salary because I still people are oh my gosh, you must be getting job offers, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't get called back for any jobs, retail, Walmart, gas station, as long as you have to check the box And honestly, I think my goofy name is the first reason why they don't call back. Like, it's, especially where I live, it's not something very common. People recognize me, they ask how my mom's doing. They don't see me, right? They see my mom. They want to know how my sister's doing because she was the brilliant one. So anytime I apply for a job and my background comes up, I just can't get any work. I know I could work for the city because of my family. And I am a CrossFit coach because my boss's mother was my 3rd grade music teacher. So everything I've gotten has to do because I'm a child of Kingsville, Texas, and not because of this, like this notoriety or anything that's on my resume or anything that I'm personally capable of doing.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Reality. I think that when people actually hear you and talk to you, as I have done, it's not what you expect. And I think everyone in the audience is really wishing that you can put this behind you. Can we hear it for Reality, please?